It's 5:34, and we are calling this special meeting to order. This is a public forum regarding the city proposed terms to transfer of the El Centro Regional Medical Center real estate and license to the Imperial Valley Healthcare District, IVHD. This is a special meeting of the City Council to consider only this matter. Madam City Clerk, can you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Elliott?
Present.
Councilmember Camarena?
Present.
Councilmember Marroquin?
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Carter?
Present.
We have a quorum.
Could you please stand while we do the flag salute? Councilmember Elliott is going to lead us.
Face the flag, place your hand over your heart, ready to begin. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing while I do the invocation. Please bow your heads. Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you first and foremost, just simply saying thank you. We come to you asking you, Lord, just to bless the Imperial Valley. Go from the east, the north, the south, and the west, Lord. We're asking for you to bless my colleagues and I as the decision making that is coming forth, Lord. Let's go into the hospital, Lord. Bless all the employees. Bless all of those that are sick and shut in. Bless their families, Lord. Come to the city. Bless all of us here, Lord. Bless the city, the employees here, Lord. We're asking for you just to bless everybody throughout this Imperial Valley. Put your hands on El Centro as we need you right now. You know how to move. You know what to do. And we're asking for you to guide, lead us, give us the wisdom and the decisions that we need to make. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
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 The agenda for this public meeting is public considering of the terms of the proposed transfer of El Centro Regional Medical Center, real property, and license to IVHD. The city owns the property where ECRMC is located at 1415 Ross Avenue, plus 4 surrounding properties as well as the hospital license. To clarify, the issue here is not to transfer IVHD. The city council very much wants to transfer to go forward and to seek input of the cost to the city of that sale. The issue is the cost is to transfer the city and the impacts of that cost. At this time, let me call on my colleagues to see if they would like to make an initial statement. What, anybody, do you guys want any? You don't?
Yes, I do. Is it, am I the only one? Sylvia?
No. Go for it.
You should go for it.
Yeah.
You should go first. Hey.
Tag, you're it.
All right. All right. Thank you for everyone for coming. Special meeting. It's going to be a very controversial meeting. I'm going to say some things that are probably going to offend some people and maybe apologize ahead of beforehand, but I want you to stay with me and try and, refrain from, screaming and hollering at me. But I want to, my message, tonight's message, when I want to start, I want to talk to Brawley. My jacket from the early 70s still fits. So, El Centro, you can just kind of push the pause button. I want to talk to Brawley for a moment, then we'll get to El Centro. I know that you feel like you've been run over and abused, and that you didn't want this, you didn't need this. I get this all the time. And I am, I'm very deeply sorry for that. I had nothing to do with that, but I feel like this transition has been mishandled in many ways. And that's one of them. But listen, Pioneers is not sustainable by itself. Rural hospitals all over the country are closing, doing the same thing. They have to downsize, lose specialties, and they end up closing. And Pioneers is, as much as you think that you're stable, That's fine for now, but it's not sustainable. Neither hospital is sustainable by itself, period. Get that, you gotta listen to that. I know a lot of you don't agree with that. You need to hear that. You're not okay. And now that you've been absorbed by IVHD, some people are saying, well, don't take El Centro, don't take that hospital. I want you to think about that for just a second with me. If El Centro wasn't absorbed in this, that's the very reason for the creation of the IVHD, was to have both hospitals working together and not fighting and competing. So El Centro would surely falter if it's not absorbed into the healthcare district. And instantly, pioneers would be overwhelmed like a hill of ants. They would not even be able to take all of the ambulance calls. I know this for a fact. I worked in the El Centro ER for 18 years. I'll get to that. I have colleagues and friends at Pioneers as well as El Centro Hospital. And we really need to work together with this. So if one hospital is somehow left out, or we don't work together to make this happen, even with a district, even if we were to take both hospitals on and we still don't cooperate, it's not going to work. We have got to get past fighting and competing, and we really need to work together. If we don't work together, if we don't cooperate, we will surely commit healthcare suicide. That's suicide ideation. You know, you can get help for that. So I'm just saying we need to work together. Now, excuse me.
See what other props
Yeah,
I
sure.
thought of. Oh, my gosh.
This Easter one of my many Easter MC shirts at home, but I like this one because it's got the date on it. It says, what does it say? It says, we are strong, ER strong, 2014. That's one of my older ones, but I got a bunch of them. So again, to El Centro now, the same message. If we don't get along, and if we don't work together with Pioneers, there's people on both sides that are resisting this, and if we have got to get over this, because again, assuredly, if we don't work together, we will surely die together. That is healthcare, metaphorically for healthcare. We will die together, together. So that's my comments, and I'm hoping that tonight, as we bring light to this whole situation, that we're going to be able to, get a better collective view of where we are and feel a sense of oneness as we find the best way forward for the entire community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do you have something to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I'm Claudia Camarena. Wanted to just say that when I ran for office, I said it was our city, our voice. And for me, it's important to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to provide input and review be able to review, I don't know if you can hear me, information that's going to affect you, your children, your generations. And that's what we called this special meeting, exactly for that, to provide an opportunity to hear what is being offered, what was offered, what is on the table, and provide you with information to be able to look at the finances and the information that you're going to see shortly, and you can see it for yourself. And then from there, make a decision to be able to provide input, and so that way we can make a decision to go forward. It was always to provide information. That is why this meeting is being called here. Give you an opportunity to have a voice. Thank you.
Thank you. To provide background information, the city staff will make the following presentations. First, a background video regarding the city's limited role in ECRMC AB 918 and timing of the current negotiations for the transfer of the city's real estate and license to IVHD. Second, a finance department presentation and impact of the proposed city payments on the city's general fund reserves. Third, a brief staff report from the interim city manager regarding the transfers of the hospital to the IVHD. After these presentations, the city clerk will call for the public comments.
Ready to begin?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Amelia, you want to go ahead and run the video?
The El Centro Community Hospital first opened in 1956 with only 44 general care beds, 10 maternity beds, and 10 bassinets. In 1986, the city adopted an ordinance creating what now is El Centro Regional Medical Center, which is a separate public agency formed under provisions of the Municipal Hospital District Act. After expansion through bonds, the hospital changed its name to El Centro Regional Medical Center in 1986. ECRMC now hosts 161 beds and offers emergency services 24 hours a day. The city owns the real property where the hospital is located and 4 surrounding properties. The city also owns the hospital license to operate. ECRMC owns 3 properties and the other non-real estate assets of the hospital. Unfortunately, because of the limited insurance coverage as well as federal and state payments for medical care, both Pioneers and ECRMC are considered distressed hospitals by the state of California. AB 918, special urgency legislation authored by former Assembly member Eduardo Garcia, established the Imperial Valley Healthcare District, encompassing the entire County of Imperial, to enhance healthcare services and financial sustainability. AB 918 became effective October 7, 2023. The initial IVHD Board of Directors was appointed under provisions of that bill. That board then formed districts within the county for purposes of representation of its residents. One purpose of the bill is to merge the 2 acute care hospitals in the county to qualify them as a sole community hospital, increasing their Medicare reimbursement and achieving cost savings through centralized administration and medical service coordination. The law provides that by November 5th, the IVHD board had to make an offer to acquire ECRMC and had to disclose the terms of that offer at a public meeting. The IVHD board also had to present a financial plan to finance the acquisition and ongoing operations of hospitals in the district. IVHD then hired a number of financial and other consultants to review the status of ECRMC and advise them on the transaction. The city provided an appraisal of the real estate and other assets. That public meeting occurred on November 5th, 2024. The bill also requires that there will be a countywide tax election on an assessment to support IVHD. That election must occur by November 2026. The Imperial Valley Healthcare District proposed an initial term sheet with the following terms. IVHD does not propose to pay for the real estate or license. They propose that the city will pay them based upon the advice of IVHD's consultants. The city of El Centro would agree to pay the district $10 million in cash on hand at closing. IVHD would assume the medical center's liabilities, not to exceed $23 million. If the district's cash on hand drops below $5 million within 2 years after closing, the city of El Centro would be responsible for making a cash payment to bring it up to the required cash amount. The city of El Centro would be required to provide a $15 million line of credit to maintain the $5 million cash on hand. The city would pay the district $2 million every 6 months until the district establishes a new public funding mechanism. The city of El Centro would be responsible for the hospital's pension liability of approximately $50 million. Transfer negotiations began after receipt of the IVHD terms. The negotiations initially were conducted by representatives of the parties. However, the city then hired outside counsel to conduct the negotiations with input from a negotiating committee of the former mayor and a council member. Some negotiations or discussions have been conducted informally by the former mayor and IVHD board president. At present, today's final term sheet provides that all assets and liabilities of the medical center will transfer to IVHD. The pension plans are included in those assets and liabilities. The medical center real property and all assets also transfer to IVHD. Upon closing, the City of El Centro will consider a one-time cash payment of $5 million to the district in order to support healthcare in the valley, and with the understanding that the city is not responsible for ECRMC's liabilities in any way. The city also will pay $1.5 million in closing costs. Prior to closing, El Centro Regional Medical Center will enter into a 3-year line of credit agreement for $15 million. This line of credit will remain in place following the closing. The City of El Centro will not be responsible for this line of credit. The remaining issue is the cost to the city and its financial impact on city operations. IVHD has indicated that, due to the city scheduling this public hearing, the city did not comply with the Wednesday, March 5th noon deadline to accept the term sheet.
Sonia, we good?
Yes, please. Who is that? Second, a financial department presentation and impact of the proposed city payment on the city general fund reserves.
So we do have our interim finance director here, Liz, that'll actually introduce Andy Heath, who should be via Zoom, right? Is he online? Okay, and he's currently our contract. Yep. Yes, I did.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, and members of the public. I'm Elizabeth Puchen, Interim Finance Director. Our finance department has been working closely with our financial consultant, Andy Heath, to analyze the potential financial impact on the City of El Centro if the council proceeds with the proposed payment to the Imperial Valley Healthcare District. Mr. Heath will present a detailed breakdown of how the payment could affect the city general fund under different scenarios. He also provide an overview of the financial long-term effect on the city's budget and financial outlook. Thank you, and Andy will proceed with the presentation.
Thank you. Is Andy online?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead, Andy.
What I'd like to do for you tonight is actually go through what we've been putting together for the city over the last 6 to 8 months or so, which is a general fund forecast, and use this forecast to show what the potential impacts to the city's general fund, which is the fund that will more than likely pay for all of the costs associated with the ECRMC transfer that will be borne by the city. The general fund, as you know, is a discretionary fund to the city. The city can use the general fund for any purpose, pretty much, that it desires upon approval by the city council and then ultimately the public. And what I'd like to do is just go through a couple of slides to show you where this general fund forecast sits right now. And it goes out about 5 years. and then what the impacts ultimately would be to the fund balance, which is basically the savings, the bank that the general fund has, the reserves that are set aside for things that come up over time, whether it be a budget or whether it be something of a one-time nature or additional ongoing costs that get added to the general fund's expenditure base. If you go to the second slide, that actually shows the forecast itself. One more slide. Okay, yeah. So this slide shows the history of the general fund and what has happened in the past. I won't focus too much on that. Where we're at today, which is that fourth set of bars called the fiscal 24-25 mid-year. And then what the forecast looks like under a significantly broad array of assumptions, okay? Keep in mind that a forecast, when it's developed, has to assume a lot of things. You have two things that are going into the forecast. You have revenues and you have expenditures. The City of El Centro's forecast is built using a base case scenario, meaning what we try to do is only focus on the ongoing revenues to support ongoing expenditures. Realizing, of course, that over time, in different years, one-time things come up, whether you get a grant that might pay for an expenditure over a couple of years, or whether you have a need for an expenditure like maybe a large fire truck or a ladder truck that ultimately will need to be paid for, sometimes by the general fund. All of those things are built in, but long-term, what we're looking at is the sustainability of the general fund. That is, whether or not the general fund is a going concern based on the ongoing revenues and ongoing expenditures. So all of those things are built in. It also assumes very conservative assumptions, not very conservative, conservative assumptions for both revenues and expenditures. So, for example, in all future years, the main revenue drivers in the general fund, which might be property tax that's collected by the general fund, sales tax, transient occupancy tax, building permits, all these things that accrue to the general fund, there are assumptions built in for growth or decrease. We don't have any decreases built in, but if you were having a recession, you might have decreases built in for future years. But we do have growth percentages built in for all future years in this forecast. Similarly, on the expenditure side, we have assumptions for those as well. The largest share of the expenditure base in the general fund is for staff and all staff-related costs related to fringe benefits, health benefits, and the such. Typically, that's between 60 and 70% of all the costs in any general fund, pretty much in the state. So it's really important that we get that right and really understand how much that's going to cost moving forward. So that is built in. And then you have other things like the things that go to support the delivery of services in the city of El Centro through the general fund, which would be fuel, energy costs, contracts with different folks, the landscaping costs, and pretty much everything associated with providing that service level. All of those have assumption factors built in as well, based on inflation or historical trends on how those costs have escalated over time. When you take all of that into account and you put it all together, and keep in mind that behind this forecast is an extremely complex Excel workbook that works to basically give you what you're seeing right now on your screen. You have a forecast for the future. So as of right now, as we're putting together the mid-year for the current fiscal year, which started July 1st, 2024, and runs through June 30th of the current year, you can see there that it's anticipated that the city will have a surplus in the general fund of just over $1 million. That's where it's sitting right now. Okay, and if you look in the prior years, you can see that the city has had surpluses in the general fund that have actually dropped down into reserves and added to that reserve base, which I'll show you on the next slide in just a minute. But you can see that surplus level is decreasing. Okay, and there's a number of reasons for that. I won't go into too many of them right now, but one thing I will say is that the city has been on a mission to fill a lot of its vacant positions. And as a result, you won't have the surpluses that you've seen in the past, many of which have come because of vacant positions that existed in the city. So those are budgeted positions, basically, that aren't filled, meaning you have a budgetary savings. When you push that out even further, you can see that the city pretty much has close to balanced budgets. We had small surpluses of $381,000 a year from now, 278, 318,000, basically a balanced budget. Loss of 22,000 in 28-29, and then in 29-30, $187,000 surplus. These numbers are important because these numbers are based on what's called an expenditure base, which is what it takes on an ongoing perspective to provide the service levels as they exist today in the city of El Centro and as they are budgeted, assuming all the positions are filled. That expenditure base is $40 million in the general fund. So your general fund budget is basically $40 million. Okay, so of that $40 million, what this is saying about the future is that you're pretty close to a balanced budget when you're just adding back 380,000 in reserves, 278,000, 318. So that's pretty close to zero, and you've got a pretty sustainable path forward. One thing I will say about the expenditure side of the equation right now is that because there are no negotiated salary increases between the city of El Centro and any of the bargaining units that are currently in MOUs, Memorandum of Understanding, that have already been negotiated for future years, there are no future salary costs built in. And I'm going to tell you what that looks like in just a minute. Okay, so if you go to the next slide, please. Okay, let's flip the switch and talk about reserves now for a minute. So this is what the reserves in the general fund look like, okay? As of right now, as at the end of 2023-24, and keep in mind that year has not been audited yet, but we anticipate that the city will end that year, June 30th, 2024, with about $26.8 million in the general fund reserve, okay? So that $26.8 million is available for the things that reserves can be used for, that I mentioned earlier. They can be used for to balance budgets, future budgets. They can be used for one-time items. They can be used for things that come up, and they can be used to have a set aside for future capital, apparatus or buildings or air conditioning replacements and those sorts of things. They can be used for deferred maintenance. Many cities have a lot of deferred maintenance for a lot of their infrastructure in their buildings, so they have a reserve set aside for that. Nonetheless, this pot of money, this savings that is accrued over a number of years and will sit right around $27 million at the end of 23-24 can be used for any of those things. This is a pot of money that pretty much all of the costs, if not all of the costs, related to anything that the city pays for ECRNC and the transfer will come from. There's two percentages on there, and you can see that as of 24-25, that $27.9 million reserve represents 70% of the city's expenditure base, which is $40 million. For the city of El Centro, that's a very good number. Okay, that's a good number. The city council in the past has done a very, very fiscally prudent job of making sure reserves are at good levels, because that just means that your city can withstand economic pressures as they come up, and you do have money set aside for things that transpire as they do that you need to pay for ultimately. So having that number at 70% is good. There's a lot of different schools of thought on how much that number should be ultimately. But for a city the size of El Centro with a $40 million budget, from my perspective, and this is just my opinion, I would try not to take that number anywhere any below about 50%. 40% would be just the really downward limit for that number. But 70% is a very good number. And you can see that if all the forecasts as we have put together come to fruition for the next 5 years, you'll still be at about 70% in 29-30. Okay, so very good. So your reserves stay between 27 and about $29 million over the term of the forecast. Now, in the last slide that I have, one more slide, you can see that there are significant expenditure pressures that could impact those reserves that are confronting the city now and potentially in the future. So some of those things, as was mentioned in the video, the payment to UCRMC, $5 million, up to $6.5 million if you include the closing costs. That's a one-time cost, and that will come out of that $28 million number, and it will go away. So it will artificially lower that number overnight to something that is $5 to $6.5 million less than what it is today. Then you have consideration and implementation of a citywide compensation survey. So that's something that the city is undertaking right now to assure that it remains an employer that can attract the best employees to provide services to the community, and more importantly, retain those best employees by offering a competitive wage so that they don't go to another jurisdiction, so that they stay with the city of El Centro and provide the services there. So to do that, you have to provide a competitive wage, and completion of this compensation survey is going to help the city get there. Ultimately, whatever the results of that compensation survey are, and ultimately whatever the city council and the city's bargaining groups negotiate and come to terms on, any additional 1% of salary that is added to the general fund. So if you gave a 1% increase to everybody in a given year, that 1% of salary would cost the general fund $180,000. So hypothetically, if you gave 3%, that would be $540,000. All right. That $540,000 is an additional ongoing cost that also needs to be subtracted from that $27.9 million number that you see in the box. Okay, and that's what that 180 is. And that 180,000 represents basically 1/2 of 1%. So if you give 3 of those, then it's 1.5% of the reserve that's gone. And it's gone because it's going to cost you that every year, year after year after year. Okay, the ECRMC payments, the $6.5 million, that represents about 16% of the reserve that you have now. So that takes the 70 down to 54. If you did 3.5 million instead, this is just again hypothetical, that would take 8.8%. That would take it down to 61.2 from 70. You can see the impact of the salary and what that would cost. And then you also have other unforeseen capital expenditures that I mentioned that may not be funded by another source. The city does a spectacular job trying to get grants and different other funding sources, one-time funding sources, to offset some of the costs that come up. However, sometimes there's just no funding sources, and the general fund will have to pay for certain costs. To the extent you have those pop up over time, and or you have economic cycles that ebb and flow, going through that right now, you need to mitigate the exposure to the impact of increasing costs or decreasing revenues on your provision, providing services to the community. So you may have to use reserves to mitigate that, rather than reduce your workforce or overnight try to do some drastic things to ultimately defray that cost increase or the revenue decrease. Reserves give you the opportunity to, of your management team and your city council, to really think about how best to resolve an economic issue and what makes most sense long term for the city before you actually put expenditure reductions in place. Nonetheless, you can see that there's a lot of things on the table and that ultimately would impact that $27.9 million reserve that you're expected to have as of mid-year this year. But just wanted to kind of give the council and the public an idea of exactly kind of where the city sits in terms of its general fund. So I will stop there.
Thank you, Andy. And general questions.
Welcome.
No, we're going to the third one. A brief staff report from the interim city manager regarding the transfers of the hospital to IVHD.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Carter. Andy, if you could stay online just in case there are some questions afterwards, we'd appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm on.
Okay.
I'm on.
And I apologize if there's some information that's kind of redundant, but I think it's important that we hear it again. Just put some notes down real briefly. Although IVHD has stated that the real estate and license are being acquired for $1, that actually is not the case. The latest term sheet, and it should be attached to your agenda, is available for review as that term sheet was approved by IVHD. It requires that the city pay IVHD $6.5 million of city general fund reserves. And again, that includes 1.5 of the closing costs, which the city is willing to pay as those are commonly paid by sellers. Therefore, the issue is today, this evening, is the payment of the $5 million. The council needs input from the citizens, and I thank you for being here this evening, city residents, on the issue because it's a significant expenditure of city funds and could have impacts within the city, as Mr. Heath has explained. As a note, it is not clear that IVHD will move forward, even if that amount were approved, as they've indicated that the deal is off the table because the city did not respond last week, but instead called for this public hearing. But assuming a term sheet is approved by the council, then it will be up to IVHD to determine how to proceed. They may accept it, ask for modifications, or determine not to proceed at all. Now, let's assume that the term sheet is agreed upon, then the parties will move forward through their respective attorneys to prepare a definitive agreement. Now, that agreement will take at least 2 months to prepare and will be considered at another open meeting. After that agreement is approved, there will be a closing period where the license transfer is processed through the state. That period may be up to 6 months or longer. It's just a guess. And during that time, ECRMC will remain in operation in the same manner as it is now through an JPA with UCSD with oversight from IVHD. There has been public records requests for appraisals prepared for and by VMG. The appraisal was prepared for the city as well as IVHD and ECRMC. All parties had to consent to its release, and as of today, that has occurred. And because the hospital has been certified as seismically compliant since that time, the values of that appraisal should be higher. We will provide a copy of the appraisal to the requesting party, and we believe that IVHD's attorney also has copies to give out. And just to summarize, I strongly recommend that this council take action today to approve a form of term sheet to return to IVHD or provide other direction as how to proceed.
Thank you. At this time, we will have public comments. Please remember that the purpose of public comments is to provide input or ask for information that assists the council as it moves forward. The city council needs and welcomes your input. If you wish to comment on a subject of this public forum, you are asked to complete a blue speaker slip and submit it to the city clerk. There will be no comments or non-agenda items at this meeting. Those comments can be made at our city regular council meeting on March 18th in this chamber. Persons wishing to address the council are not required to identify themselves. However, this information assists the Mayor Pro Tem by ensuring that all persons wishing to address the council are recognized and also assist the city clerk in preparing the city council's meeting minutes. When the item is announced and your name is called by the city clerk, please step to the podium and state your name for the record. Unless the Mayor Pro Tem extends the time, there is a 3-minute time limit for each public presentation. The Mayor Pro Tem may grant additional time on an individual or group basis. You may not show a visual presentation without city review of this material. If physically present, speak from the podium. Do not interrupt another speaker or a council member or staff. An organized group may pick a spokesperson. Try not to repeat prior comments by providing new comments. Do not include irrelevant comments or comments of any other subject. No speaker may give that person a time to another speaker. Personal attacks or comments are inappropriate. No speaker or member of the public is in attendance at the meeting shall actually disrupt the meeting by failing to comply with the rules for conduct of this meeting. Sufficient copies of any written material must be provided to the city clerk. The city clerk sets a timer for your 3 minutes of speaking time. You may begin speaking when the city clerk holds up a green card. When you see a yellow card, you have 1 minute left of your total 3 minutes. When you see a red card, your 3 minutes are over. Please stop speaking. Now, I turn this over to our Madam City Clerk.
First person to speak would be Virginia Torres.
To the City Council of Centro, I hope that this finds you well. My name is Virginia Torres, and I have been a dedicated employee of El Centro Regional Medical Center for the past 19 years. As a longtime resident of El Centro, I have witnessed firsthand the critical role ECRMC plays both in our community and our economy. I am writing today to express deep concern regarding the future of ECRMC and its potential impact on both the 1,000 employees who work there and the residents of El Centro. Among these 1,000 employees, approximately 200 have been with ECRMC over 15 years, highlighting the stability and the dedication of the workforce. Over the past 2 weeks, I have come across information suggesting that ECRMC may not receive the necessary support from the city. While we understand that the city is not directly responsible for the hospital, it is clear that decisions made by the city council, such as management agreement with UCSD, budget approvals, and leadership changes, significantly affect ECRMC's operation and sustainability. I ask that you consider the following question. What happens if the city of El Centro does not continue to support the city-owned hospital? Does it close? What happens to 1,000 employees who depend on their jobs at ECRMC? Can the city or county absorb 1,000 employees without facing severe financial strain? This potential loss could devastate the local economy, leaving many without work and in an already struggling community. What happens to the patients who rely on ECRMC for critical care, especially those from the surrounding areas like Calexico, Heber, or Ocotillo? If ECRMC were to close or be drastically reduced in a capacity, the remaining hospital system would be overwhelmed. Critical patients may face delays, and those who need immediate care may not be able to receive them in time. Without the support of the City Council, the future of ECRMC and by extension, the health and well-being of our community may be in jeopardy. I urge you to consider the broader implication of these decisions, not just for the hospital staff, but for every resident who depends on ECRMC for life-saving health care. The decisions you make now will either make or break the vital institution. While the current council may not have initiated this project, you are the ones who can ensure that ECRMC has the opportunity to thrive, supporting both its employees and the residents of El Centro. I ask that you please consider the long-term impact of your decisions and work to ensure that ECRMC remains stable, sustainable healthcare provider for our community. The people of El Centro, especially those who work here, deserve a clear and supportive path going forward. I thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you, Virgie.
Next person is Kay Priala.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Kay Picola. I'm a Brawley resident and fairly known in the community and maybe somewhat outspoken. I want to thank you immensely for convening this meeting. And removing the non-disclosure agreements so that questions that we have had for a long time that could not be answered can now be answered. I have a long list here. It will exceed the 3 minutes. So what I'm going to do is give it to the interim city manager so that he can address it. I will follow up with an email. It is important that we conclude what was created by what we all understand to be a bad bill. We're stuck with it. Let's, as Mr. Elliott says, let's make the best of this for the residents of Imperial Valley. Unfortunately, we have been paying as taxpayers, including your interim city manager, taxes for, well, Mark, you probably haven't been paying for 70 years,
Oh, no.
but 72 years for some of us, including my husband and his family. And we feel we have made a financial investment that other folks throughout the county, with the exception of Calexico, who has made a financial investment for almost 45 years, with 30 years of that with no hospital. So, but all of us are inflamed by being forced into this. So I've expressed my opinion here. I would like you to take consideration as you understand our frustration. We have a piece of property that we paid for dearly that has been stolen from us. We would like y'all to make some investment, and the tax bond that you will be asked to do is not fair to both the north end and the south end when y'all have not been paying. I appreciate this. I would also like to acknowledge how an important issue this is, that our assemblyman flew in from Sacramento to be here. Thank you, Jeff Gonzalez.
Next person is Pete Rodriguez.
Thank you, Kate.
There you go, Pete. You can give it to the city clerk. She'll have it. Thank you, Kate. Appreciate it.
Good evening, City Council and all the audience here. I have read over the documents that you guys have presented, and I have strong feelings about this. We're a community of Imperial County. We're not Centro, we're not Brawley. Marty, I can no longer wear a veterinary jacket because I'm a football official. It stays in the closet, and I can't wear it because I can't be biased. And that's the truth. And this is what I bring up. We need to come together as a community, North End, South End, and what we don't understand, some of us don't understand is real case scenarios. We haven't had in our community a school shooting, but imagine a school shooting and not a second hospital just saying those people too. Imagine another accident, 111, where there's 6, 7 cars, and those helicopters can't get in to those outlying hospitals. We don't have the hospital to send them to, then what? It is vital to keep this hospital open for the community, for elderly individuals. We're gonna have an air show Saturday. God forbid there's a terrible accident, people are hurt. Where do we say that that place was closed? These are real case scenarios, people. Real case scenarios. We're a community of individuals that work and live in this county. Granted, I agree, the bill is not the best thing available. And I don't want the state to bail us out or the feds forget about them because they're not coming. Okay? This is up for you, the council, to make the best decision for our community. We're Americans. We live in the United States of America. We took a pledge, right? All of us took a pledge. If we believe in it, we need to act like Americans. It doesn't matter what color or race or what position we are, Republican or Democrat or liberals. We need to come together as a unit, a community. Madam Pro Tem Carter, you talk about Fraser Park. You talk about Gomez Park. Can you imagine if you go bankrupt with a hospital? Your city goes bankrupt with it. Those dreams are done. What you promised those kids, it's over. Come together, council. Come together, audience. Put our swords aside for the right reasons. Think about our seniors. My mother's 84. Our aunt is 94. They're still living. There's no expiration. They live long lives. They're just our family. Okay? Where do they go if those hospitals are shut down? Come together. It's not an ugly deal. Bitter?
Your time
Yes.
has been, it's complete.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pete.
Thank you, Peter.
Next person is Monica Perez.
Good evening. It is sad to see and hear that the city says it cares for its community but has limited desire towards keeping us healthier and alive. Speaking of public trust and public policy, however, sometimes placing ego or blame over public safety. The city, over decades, has prioritized police and fire, which, don't get me wrong, it's without doubt necessary, but also landscape, pet, and water parks, district funds towards beautification of Interstate 8 roads, instead of an earnest need for accessible healthcare. You express concern for the inability to give yourself city employees raises. If you agree to the terms of Imperial Valley Health District, is that really your priority over the safety and accessibility of emergency care services, including surgery and dire healthcare services in our valley? ECRMC personnel have worked very hard over the decades, and our Brawley Hospital is not enough to care for the entire Imperial Valley. If you vote against the terms, what will happen to us? Our hospital is a source of civic pride and a provider of 1,000 jobs for the Imperial Valley. What will happen if you continue to shy away from our hospital? What will become of your community? Reduced local spending and local support to our local businesses. That's what will happen. Because without our local hospital, highly educated, trained, and dedicated individuals will pick up their families and move away, fortifying other communities except this one. My plea is for the city to not further delay and vote to please approve the terms and conditions of ECRMC's acquisition into Imperial Valley Healthcare District. After all, after the many decades of being a city-owned hospital, is our hospital not owed at least that much? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next person is Sky Ainsworth. Next person, Edgar Garcia.
Good evening, Madam Mayor Pro Tem and council members. My name is Edgar Garcia. It seems that we find ourselves here again after a long journey with this hospital. It was November 22 when this council took over the board because the hospital was in dire need of financial assistance. It was months from potentially closing. The council basically upended the entire structure of the hospital, including CEO, CFO, and got it back on track. Part of this was effectuating AB 918 because, as all financial projections have shown, rural individual hospitals that are this close together cannot financially compete because they're constantly competing with each other. Double management structures, competing with each other for contracts, for services, for doctors, for equipment. It's an unsustainable model for a county of our size. People are ignoring the gigantic pink elephant in the room, which is seismic retrofitting. An unfunded state mandate that gave ECRMC until 2020 to be seismically compliant and gave Pioneer until 2030. Now, ECRMC is almost completely seismically compliant. That means it is a fully functioning acute care center and will continue to be so into the future. We cannot say the same about Pioneers. Pioneer has a mandate to be seismically retrofit by 2030. The governor has recently allowed distressed hospitals to apply for extensions up to 3 years. However, that extension has to come with a seismic retrofitting plan, which includes funding. That is not going to happen. Pioneer is 0% seismically compliant in their main building, And if you look at the engineering specs, because of how the retaining walls and foundation were laid when it was built, it is financially cumbersome to retrofit that building. There will need to be another hospital built in the north end. Where will that come from? IVHD has no assets. The assets that they do right now are nominal. The main asset that they do have is Pioneer. However, it being a non-seismically compliant building means it's not an acute care center, or it will not be as time lapses. The only acute care center that is seismically compliant and ready to take patients past 2033 is El Centro Regional Medical Center. Now, I do believe that this is something that's completely necessary. I've been advocating for it since 2022.
Your time is up.
May I have 1 minute? Thank you. This needs to get done. The faster this gets done, the faster the mixing of the organizations can occur, and we can start realizing the cost savings that will allow this system to function. As far as the city of El Centro giving 6.5 million, I understand that it's common for the sellers to pay closing costs. I have no problem with that. However, $5 million coming out of our general reserve, when I spent 9 years on the council, seeing that reserve slowly dwindle due to unfunded mandates, due to COVID, due to potential natural disasters, those are the issues that you will see in the next decade. And there is no guarantee that those reserves will be replenished based on the projections that are coming. Those projections also do not include the fact that we have a study as to how our employees should be paid. We know that's going to cost money. And also, furthermore, one of the biggest things that's going to cost us money in the down the road is CalPERS. The state of Sacramento is consistently overestimating the returns on CalPERS. We saw this coming 10 years ago, and they finally picked our pocket. That's why our reserves on a yearly basis went from 2 to a couple 100,000. So those are the things that I hope you consider in this. And we need to approach this hospital thing in a very unique way. We need to make sure it gets done, however, not at the risk of putting our city in a precarious position. Thank you.
Thank you, Edgar.
Thank you, Edgar.
Next person is Chris Bonchberg.
Good evening, City Council. I'm Chris Bjornberg. I am a resident of Brawley and the current CEO for IVHD. I do want to first and foremost correct some misinformation. As far as PMHC or PMH is concerned, Pioneers Hospital is not 0% compliant. The majority of the hospital is actually compliant, and all of it is compliant for 2020 seismic. So that was not, you were not given full information. It does need a portion of it to be able to get the 2030 seismic compliant. That is true. We're estimating that that's probably going to be anywhere from $80 to $120 million to get that seismically compliant. I do want to make sure that you guys all understand that we're not looking at this from the standpoint of trying to put one over on the city. That is not our intent. Our intent is that the city takes responsibility for the hospital. That's what we want the city to do. And part of that is putting a little bit of money in there. When you've never done that, we've sat in meetings where I was expressly told, the city has never put any money, has not put a dime into the hospital. And that's not fair to turn over the keys to an asset that is in the negative, $20 million to $34 million. That was what the assessment came out as. So you paying $5 million to get rid of $20 to $30 million in negative asset is a pretty good deal. I also want to make sure that I point out that I agree with Councilmember Allitt as well. This is a situation that is countywide. We're looking at taking care of all of the people in this county, and we have to work together to be able to do that. That means no more of this north versus south. None of that kind of stuff that we have in our community should exist. I know Pablo very well. We work together and we're going to continue to work together. And after this is done, Pablo and I will continue to work together to make sure that healthcare is what it needs to be in this community. And with your help, we can make that happen. But we need your financial commitment in order to make that happen. We can't do it without it. The numbers just don't work and they don't add up. We need the city to help us with that so that we can make this work for the entire community, for everyone in the Imperial County. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next person is Josh Snyderman.
Thank you. I'm on Zoom.
Go ahead.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Joshua Schneiderman. I'm a mergers and acquisitions attorney with Sneller Wilmer. We are outside legal counsel for IVHD. IVHD has been attempting to negotiate with the city since around April of last year. In June last year, the parties, including IVHD, approved a contract with BMG to conduct an independent expert appraisal of the hospital facilities. The parties did a lot of work with BMG to complete that appraisal, which was ready for review last fall and finalized in October. My colleague, Adriana, brought with her tonight paper copies of the executive summary from the appraisal dated October 21st, 2024, for whoever wants one. IVHD considers this to be a public record, but if you're wondering why it still says draft on it, it's because while IVHD approved it as final, the city has yet to do so. Why the city hasn't finalized this hasn't been articulated to us. We do ask that the city explain its position in that regard tonight. That being said, this appraisal shows a fair market value of the city's and ECRMC's real property and business enterprise. It shows an adjusted fair market value of between negative $20.6 million and negative $34.4 million. This is because the hospital has over $201 million in liabilities. In other words, the hospital is drastically underwater. Given this, any suggestion that a $5 million payment at closing would be a gift is pretty inaccurate from our perspective. The reality, as can be seen from ECRMC's financial position, which is disclosed on its website and you heard tonight, is that the city is in a relatively poor financial position and the hospital, not the city, is that the hospital is in very poor financial position and is burning through cash. We've included some of this publicly available information in the handout that Adriana has. Pioneers and ECRMC will continue to struggle because right now, ECRMC and Pioneers are competitors. Neither is able to procure the adequate resources independently that it needs to succeed. The best chance for these hospitals to survive is to unite them so they are working together. The IVHD board has approved many versions of our November 5th offer in an attempt to come to an agreement, and the city council has also approved many separate versions. However, these negotiations have taken a really long time, and IVHD frankly needs to plan its path forward. As a result, we clearly communicated to the city's attorneys on March 1st that IVHD is at a point now where it needs to either move forward with integrating ECRMC and Pioneers, which is its very strong preference, or it needs to plan an alternative path. We knew this council meeting was on March 4th, which is why we gave the city until March 5th at noon to approve the deal. Despite being past that date, if you approve a term sheet tonight, our negotiators have told me that they will likely take it to the IVHD board's regular meeting, which is this Thursday, for reconsideration, because the IVHD negotiators really want to try and make this deal work. We can't keep wasting time and money on this. We need to move forward one way or another tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next person is Adriana Ochoa.
Good evening. My name is Adriana Ochoa, and I'm here today as legal counsel for IVHD at the request of the ad hoc negotiators. I'm here to encourage you to approve the term sheet and end the state of limbo. I have been part of the negotiation team since the board created the ad hoc negotiations committee last spring, and I've seen our ad hoc committee spend endless hours discussing proposed terms, speaking with consultants, poring over financial data, and making concession after concession in multiple sincere attempts to come to an agreement with the city over this hospital. At the city's request, we agreed to a non-disclosure agreement so that the parties could discuss the terms of the proposed agreement confidentially and talk openly about finances without raising public alarm or creating false narratives. But despite our multiple attempts to communicate with the city, our negotiators have been shut down and told that you won't talk to them. and that we should talk through lawyers instead. Why? Policymakers are supposed to talk to each other. Leaders are supposed to talk to other leaders to work together to solve the community's problems. But at your request, we communicated through lawyers and sent over the last, best, and final term sheet. But instead of approving this term sheet last week and moving forward like you could have done, now you say you have to do it in open session and subject the deal to public input. Yet the public has not had the benefit of the months of financial forecasting, modeling, or consultation with experts like the parties have had. It's a little unreasonable to insist on conducting all negotiations confidentially up until now, and then at the 11th hour, ask the public to weigh in on what is a very complicated transaction. With all due respect, it's not the public's job to try to figure out if this is a good deal or not, because that's a lot of work. And that's respectfully what they elected you to do. Please approve the term sheet so that we could take it back to the IVHD board for reconsideration and move forward, or don't, and continue to be the only reason these two hospitals remain competitors and end up maybe in really bad positions. I also want to briefly address the baseless allegations that have been made by City Councilwoman Camarena against IVHD's board chair, Katie Burnworth, regarding so-called backroom deals. These accusations are entirely unfounded.
Excuse me, that's out of order. We said we were only going to talk about the matter at hand. We weren't going to bring that in.
It's directly about the matter at hand. It's about the negotiations that have occurred. And
ma'am, it's out of order.
It's not, I disagree, ma'am.
I'm sorry, I don't disagree. So
Okay.
either you can be quiet or we can have you escorted out. But right now, we're saying it's out of order.
Okay, well, what I'll say is that every moment Ms. Burnworth has spent on this initiative has been done voluntarily, on personal time, and driven solely by a deep commitment to the well-being of her county and the people. And she served her board and this county with integrity, dedication, and an unwavering focus on improving healthcare for everyone. My board and my ad hoc negotiators, they remain committed to this mission, and they'll continue working towards a better future with all their constituents. The question for tonight is, will you do the same? And I sincerely hope that you will. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Laura Goodsell.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and members of the council. I am Laura Goodsell. I don't have a Letterman's jacket or anything like that. I guess maybe I'm from Holtville, so I'm figuratively and maybe literally Switzerland in all of this, but I am on the board of the Imperial Valley Healthcare District representing Holtville. And I am here this evening because I want all of you to know that all of us on this board, as Adriana mentioned, we're here because we want what's best for the community of the Imperial Valley. We have 7 members that represent this entire county. And you can say what you want about the bill, you can say what you want about the people, but our heart is in it. We don't get paid to do it. We have put in countless hours. I'm part of the negotiating team, which means I put in more hours. And it's very disheartening to me that we were moving along and then all of a sudden, everything stopped. And I don't know if that's misinformation coming to you as a council, if it was a change in leadership on the council, but I just want to urge you to approve these terms in the best way that you can to try and help us do what needs to be done for the people of this valley, because I always quote my dad, but he always said, you have 2 choices. You can be part of the solution or you can be part of the problem. I want all of us to be part of the solution because the people of this valley deserve it. And that is why I am on this board. And that is why I am urging you to please work with us, because we are here to work with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Katie Burnsworth.
Good evening. My name is Katie Burnworth, and I serve as the chair for Imperial Valley Healthcare District. Before I start my public comment tonight, I want to directly address the recent comments that were made in your presentation and your video regarding my role in the negotiations between IVHD and the city. Let me first clarify one very particular point. No single individual on the board has any authority to make a deal on their own. So the fact that there's claims in your staff report that suggest any single individually can dictate the outcome of any decision like this completely, they don't understand what they're talking about, and they clearly don't know how municipal law works. Both IVHD have clear and established processes. Anything discussed has to go to the board for full approval. And so if you're wondering, did I talk to the previous mayor, Mr. Oliva, during our negotiations? Absolutely. That's how meetings get stuff done. Direct communication isn't just with less of a quorum, isn't illegal, and it's essential for reaching an effective and timely agreement. After each discussion that I had with him, I also immediately update my IVHD ad hoc committee. And if you don't believe me, you can ask them, because they're in this room as well. And if he didn't update you on your side, then that's on him. That's out of my control. What I can assure you is that no laws were broken, no ethical boundaries were crossed, and there sure isn't no backdoor deal. These conversations were simply discussions of ideas, how to achieve an agreement beneficial to both parties, an agreement that if reached would be reviewed and approved by our respective boards. When this negotiation process began in September of 2024, IVHD and the city met and agreed and committed to meet every single Monday at 5 p.m. until a deal was done. After only 3 meetings, the city called them off, and they simultaneously kept ECR and CR the deal. So how are you going to know about hospital operations? Because this isn't just a piece of land. This is a business as well, without them in the room. So IVHD went back to the drawing board. We repeatedly asked for joint full board meetings because clearly there was a communication issue going on the side of the city. At one time, we even both noticed a special meeting as a joint closed session, and the city canceled it at last minute. I also want to openly acknowledge IVHD, we don't love this deal, but it's the fact from what I'm getting, the city doesn't either. But what that tells me is that it's probably fair. Because if one party was parading around that they got some great deal, that would be an imbalance. It wouldn't be right. So the fact that neither of us really like it shows that there's enough compromise and it is best for the community.
Time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next person is James Garcia.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem. May I have an extra minute?
You're asking for it in advance?
Yeah. I'm just accounting for my standards and what have you, speaking in public.
Yes, you may.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Hello, my name is James Garcia. I serve as a board member for the Imperial Valley Healthcare District and on the ad hoc committee and negotiating committee. And I can vouch that Mrs. Burnsworth has exhibited tremendous leadership, and we're lucky to have her, and she's always kept us up to date and has done a tremendous job. And I'm here to ask you for your approval on this deal. We don't lack talented healthcare providers in this valley. We just simply don't have the right hospital model in place to thrive. We need to have a sole community hospital. This reality has been acknowledged for many years, and several attempts have been made to merge, but failed. According to the VMG appraisal report that Adriana Ochoa has, El Centro Regional Medical Center is in debt, and its debt is greater than the value of its assets, somewhere in the neighborhood of $20 to $34 million. According to the VMG appraisal report, El Centro Regional is underwater. This acquisition with El Centro Regional is not a great deal, and anybody from Brawley will tell you that on the face of it. However, with the community health and well-being in mind, this is a deal we know needs to come together for the greater good. Early on, we hired a financial strategy firm, the Berkeley Research Group, to advise us. From their findings, in conjunction with the VMG report, we were given the bottom line costs and financial assurances that we needed. That's what we asked for. We weren't asking, what do you think we can get out of El Centro? What's the bottom line that we need to ask from El Centro to ensure that El Centro Regional would not go under before we were able to get a funding mechanism in place? El Centro Regional Medical Center is currently struggling and burning through cash, no fault of the professionals, because Pablo is amazing, and but it's the model that's not working for them. The amount we are asking for in the term sheet is not to simply add money to our bank account, but to ensure sustainability until the funding mechanism is in place. We started negotiations with the city of El Centro around April of last year. Negotiation meetings with the city have been hard to come by and slow moving. From what we were often told due to scheduling conflicts, keep in mind, we're talking about $200 million of debt. Our very first meeting, we had all of the decision makers in the room, the bondholder, Preston Hollow, El Centro Regional Medical Center leadership, Imperial Valley Health District Ad Hoc Committee. We all showed up, and after we showed up, we were told that the city would not be attending. We then moved to Zoom meetings. The first 2 Zoom meetings were only attended by the city's attorney, again, scheduling issues. We then progressed into in-person meetings and agreed to have meetings every Monday to advance the process as fast as possible. After a few of those, the city decided they only wanted El Centro and Imperial Valley IVHD ad hoc in those meetings, excluding the other decision makers. Meetings were still difficult to schedule with the city, often canceling at the last minute due to scheduling conflicts. Next, the city requested the negotiations go through attorneys only, excluding the council members and the ad hoc committee from the conversations. This has gone on for a while, but feedback from the city's outside counsel has been slow, often telling our attorneys they are waiting for direction from their clients. Feeling stagnant, IVHD proposed having joint closed session meetings with the entire city council and the entire IVHD board so that we could discuss this deal directly. We have made several requests, and they were denied every time. There seems to be some misunderstanding as to why the city was given a deadline. After the track record that we have experienced of slow response from the city, IVHD needs to know if this acquisition is truly going to happen or not, so that we can begin to strategize on how we move forward as a district and continue our objective of providing the best healthcare for our valley.
Time is up.
Thank you. Perfect time.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Mary Ellen McCombs.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I think many of these questions were probably brought up when the city first began with the idea that we had a problem at ECRMC. It's not the first time. It may not be the last. However, the disclosures on the part of the city council and the financial information that has been repeatedly requested by several of us and nothing has happened, has led us to this point. Unfortunately, I agree that probably the healthcare district needs an answer. However, the citizens of the city of El Centro might like to know what is going to happen to this $200 million of debt. Is this board going to absorb it? Something. We have a seismic debt, apparently. All of these things could have come forward from the city council in various meetings, and we wouldn't be having this meeting tonight, in which we're hearing that a lot of it is where our own city council is responsible for. Now, I know that we have several new members, but I also know one of them, at least, can't return a phone call. So maybe I understand that they'd like to have an immediate answer, but possibly the citizens of the city of El Centro really would like to know what truly is going on, and maybe the healthcare district would like to make a presentation to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next person is Cheryl Walker.
Can you see me? Where's my box? Good afternoon, interim pro tem mayor and council members. I'm Cheryl Villegas Walker. I had the opportunity to serve as a member of this council for 25 years. Also had the opportunity to serve off and on as a member of the ECRMC Board of Trustees for 20 years. So I kind of feel like I know a little bit about the situation we're facing. We have not heard a single person say that this is not the path to move forward. I think we can all agree it is the path to move forward. What I'm hearing is that the stumbling block is where do we come up with that piece from the city of El Centro? Because we already know Calexico is contributing. We already know Brawley is contributing. We heard a financial report. I'm going to take a look through some of the financials and share with you maybe where we can find some of that money. At your meeting on February 18th, you as the city council approved your invoice report. Included within your invoice report was a payment to your city attorney. Vendor totals for fiscal year of $450,738.54. Let's start reining in what you're spending your city attorney dollars on. Again, let me repeat that number. Vendor totals, $450,738.54, approved by this city council on February 18th. You also hired a lobbyist, primarily, I believe, for the purpose of helping get to this point. That lobbyist has been paid or invoiced at least $55,000. Now that we are on our way with regard to the healthcare district, perhaps that's an expense we can look at revisiting. I also want to take a look at your Measure P funding. First, I was blown away at how well you guys are doing with regard to your reserve. I got to tell you, $5 million with a reserve like that, this should be over and done with. $5 million with a reserve that, if I heard right, and I'm getting older, but I thought I heard the reserve somewhere between $27 and $29 million. To move forward this path. And remember, and we all know, this is going to be a long journey. What we're asking you to do is to approve the term sheet, move forward with that expenditure. Let's talk about Measure P just for a minute. You have an unallocated $8 million in Measure P money every year, right? Your estimated actual for fiscal year 2021-2022 was $7.5 million. The actual came in at 7.9. Almost. Could I have one more minute, please? Thank you. Your estimated actual for 23-24 was 8.1. Revised budget for 24-25, $8.1 million. What are you spending that money on? And have you dedicated those funds? Because there was a 7.2 put aside for the police department, 1.3, almost 1.4 capital improvements to Buena Vista Park, $1.7 million for Valley Center Point. Now I checked with my friends from Brawley that were coming in from the north end, and that Valley Center Point is still there. So I'm thinking that $1.7 million may be available. Folks, we have waited a long time, a really long time. We are now within reach of our goal of a united healthcare system for the benefit of this valley. Do the right thing, get the deal done. From where you started on that interim term sheet to where you are now, you guys have negotiated a phenomenal deal. They take the debt, they take the assets. You guys come up with chump change to move this forward.
Time is up.
And I ask you to do that for the benefit of all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon.
Next speaker is Dr. Andrew Lafree.
Good evening, council members. My name is Dr. Andrew Lafree.
Good evening.
So I'm an ER doctor and the chief of staff, and I've worked at El Centro for over a decade. I don't just work at the hospital. My wife was born there. Her 5 siblings were born there. When she shattered her leg, she got treated there. When my father-in-law had a massive heart attack, his life was saved there. I can't speak well to the finances like Cheryl. I'm a doctor, I'm not an accountant. But what I want to say is this. Over the last decade, I've seen us lose one service after another. We lost L&D, or labor and delivery. We lost pediatrics. We lost neurosurgery. We lost orthopedics. And I could go on. Every single one of these has been very painful as a physician on the ground and really breaks your heart. Just looking at the L&D closure, it's been a complete nightmare. You can ask any of the OBs at Pioneers how it has impacted them and their ability to deliver care. And we have women, young mothers now, who have to drive 2 hours out of county to deliver their babies. We cannot keep shrinking and expect to survive. So I think without this sale and the creation of a regional healthcare district, there is no sustainable future for ECRMC. With it, I think we have a real chance to rebuild and restore the services that our community needs. And I urge you guys to find a way forward with the sale and to take this important step towards securing the future of healthcare in the Imperial Valley. So thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Next is Marisa Hurtado.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. I'm Marisa Hurtado. I'm a former mayor from the city of Calexico. We also are the individuals who did a recall in the city of Calexico. We're very active out there, but we also are a city who has been without a hospital since in the 80s approximately. Our Heffernan board had a very large amount of money when we had to be dissolved. When we were dissolved, we had about 2.5 million in our account. That was savings from probably about almost 30 years. I was born at Calexico Hospital. My kids were born in El Centro Regional Medical Center. I have respect for everyone here, but I do want to make sure that you all understand that we all need to work together because communities like ours, we have no choice. At this point right now, the city of Calexico is at risk of losing our paramedics and our 201 authority as a ambulance service in that border city. That is so important and critical and crucial to a community like ours. But here we are also looking at this, the fact that here we are still being charged taxes for Heffernan until God knows when all of this is going to be resolved, which may be 2026, until we may have that vote. But what if that vote goes to where we don't even accept this? Because that is where we're going, right? We're going towards a vote. But this vote then is going to be still 2 more years from now. And the city of Calexico citizens continue to pay that tax. For what? We have no services. We actually have a lot of respect for the IDHD, what they are doing, because honestly, we felt very abandoned by our Heffernan board and what they were up to back then. We don't see our mayor here today. We know that El Centro lost their mayor. The CEO is gone. What is it that's happening to us as a community? Why are we going backwards? But as people in Calexico, that we always have to just watch what's going on from the authorities above us, which is El Centro and Raleigh, because we have to rely on you. We have no choice. But at the same time, we have no discount. The services that we pay are exactly like everybody else pays, but it's just longer distance. So for us, not having our paramedics out there, that means people will die. And the fact we don't have a hospital, they've already proven to us that that makes a difference in our community. So what I want to tell everyone is, please be like us, be patient, because actually this has been very complex and absolutely frustrating to watch our money be dwindled away on God knows what, because we know it's all gone. And we know that that's how all of this has been paid for all this time. But we respect what's happening here, we're holding back. As a matter of fact, we can't even afford an attorney, so we can't even do that. So we're relying on you all, on the whole community of Imperial County, to please allow this to happen. It's the law. We're not very happy with what Edward Garcia did to us, because we know there was probably a lot of, like what has been suspected here back then, backroom conversations. But please, we ask and we urge everyone, please, let's get it all done so we can move forward and have quality healthcare again.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Arturo Proctor.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Arturo Proctor. I sit on the IVHD board, but I'm also a citizen of El Centro. When the position opened up, I know there were a lot of applications taken to be appointed to this board here in the city. And after talking to several people in the community, they encouraged me to put in for it. What they said is that I could probably bring an unbiased opinion to all the goings on with this new healthcare district. So I took up the challenge. But when I took up the challenge, I did it with a prayer, just like you, to have wisdom from God to guide me in the right direction. And I know I've been blessed with it because I see and I saw the writing on the wall. One of the things that scared me was I'm a 2-time cancer survivor, and out of all the people in my family, I took it the worst when it came to COVID. I almost ended up a week at that tent that we had. And that's really, really scared me. I retired from the California Highway Patrol after 28 and a half years. And I can honestly tell you that the CHP depends on these hospitals. And I'll give you a global perspective from me as the former commander. You wouldn't know how frustrated we are when we are at Glamis in November, when we have thousands of people that are injured or killed, and at a minimum, there's 3 every year that have to be flown out because El Centro Regional and PMH don't have the space. So what ends up happening? People die. Not to mention the collisions that we have on a daily basis. 3/4 of the injuries of the collisions that we take care of in the Highway Patrol are our injury collisions. Then we also have, and you'll know, sir, we have an obligation by the state to provide services to the in custody inmates in the prisons. That's another issue. It goes beyond the $5 million. Let me tell you, it goes beyond that. It has to do with lives. The profit in public service is not money. It's safety, and it's the health of all the people in this county. The good part about being on the Highway Patrol is you have an overview, and you're not into politics. It's not the north end or the south end. I've worked all over the state, Humboldt County, Mendocino County, but I've never worked in an area where we're risking not having health care for everybody. And that's a blessing in of itself. So I hope I tone down the temperature in the room, but I can tell you this, from looking at it from the outside in, we need to do this. And we balanced all the opposition, we balanced all the positivity of why we need to move forward. And I can honestly tell you from my heart, I'm afraid, and we need to move forward on this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Protem, we have no more speaker slips.
Do we have anybody online?
No, ma'am.
We do have one.
Yeah, she can speak and then fill out the form.
That's what I was about to ask, if anybody else from the audience would like to speak.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I'm Dr. Kalada. I have been a practicing physician for the last 33 years. I served in El Centro Hospital Board for 15 years. I also served on the California Medical Board for 13 years. I also been a teaching professor for UCSD for many years, for 20 years. As being on the hospital board of El Centro, it was 55 beds, and I was one of the hospital board members of erecting from 55 beds to 165 beds. I've seen many decisions that have been done incorrectly, but I think the idea is a great idea to have a hospital board. Despite of the fact that I was in disagreement with Mr. Garcia, several times I have voiced my opinion, but at the same time, I feel that the idea was good for the valley. The problem is following points. One, it is true that El Centro have not put any money for this hospital. This hospital have lost a lot of money because of COVID and because of putting it as earthquake compatible. In the same time, you have the several parts of the community, like Calexico and Brawley, have did their share, despite of everybody, of all the conflict. Now I agree. We have to find ways of at least maybe taxing, or there has to be ways of helping the whole process of moving forward, despite of the disagreement, despite of all the conflict, despite of all what happened, of poor decisions or whatever it is. I think everyone has to forget whatever is happening, and we have to think of ways of bringing in the money to be able to make that happen. At the same time, be involved. Do not just sit there and don't oversee IVHD. Mr. Gonzalez is a dear friend to my heart, and he chose a group of physicians that they are practicing physicians, and they have been practicing for a long time. All right, thank you. That's all I wanted to say. Have a great evening, all of you.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else? If you would step to the podium, and then after you get through speaking, you can fill out a blue slip with our city clerk, please. Please state your name.
My name is Jose Alvarez. I work for Pioneers Hospital. I am the financial analyst. And actually, I am looking forward for this merger. Especially, I would like to see, the difference in reimbursement from Medicare due to being a community hospital. For example, right now, for a knee replacement outpatient, we receive from Medicare approximately $13,000. For if it's converted via to inpatient, we receive about $16,000 for the case. So I'm looking forward to see, what would be the difference. Also, I'm looking forward to maximize reimbursements. For example, Donald Trump signed an executive order for price transparency. So I'm curious as to find out how much the Centro Regional is receiving for surgeries and also ER levels. There's possibility there's additional money there, maybe additional $1 million per year. So I'm looking forward to, to work with our Centro Regional and finding ways to find, additional money, maximize reimbursement. For example, right now for E&M levels in our hospital, we receive from California Health and Wellness, which is a team they own, California Health and Wellness, and now is IV Health Net. We receive between $30 and $180. Yuma, they receive between $100 and $800. That's a big difference, right? I went to the website for El Centro Regional. They failed to publish the transparency for this insurance, IV Health Net. So I was curious to find out if they are being fair, they are getting payments fairly from IV Health Net. So I'm looking forward, finding ways to maximize reimbursement. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, this is our last call. If nobody else would like to step to the podium, we will be coming back to do our final discussion, but right now we are going to take a short break.
There's one more.
Thank you.
Oh, there's one
So
more.
sorry, I'm sorry. Well, I wasn't planning on speaking today, but listening to everyone here, I'm.
Anna, your
Yes,
name?
my name is Anna Brinkerhoff.
Thank you.
Yes, you know.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry. As I said, I was not prepared to speak today. And the reason I am speaking up is because we really need to come to the, basically to the point. Are we going to say yes to this? And if we do not say yes to this, the repercussions are really severe. And we cannot just sit here and think that, we're gonna keep on pushing, kicking the ball down the way here. It's just not possible to continue to do this. And I love how Cheryl explained this. There are lots of things that happened in the past. And yes, I was an employee at El Centro Regional for 29 years. I was an employee and retired from UC San Diego after 13 years there. And so I know healthcare, but I am not, in a position right now to really say what really happened in El Centro and whatever. But we do know that Pioneers Memorial Hospital has those seismic things that are coming up. What are we going to do when that happens if we don't move forward today with what needs to be done today at El Centro? I have a grandson that was born in San Diego because there is no NICU, no pediatrics, nothing down here, and except at Brawley. And I have not witnessed it. There are waiting times in Pioneers for all those services. So basically, the decision needs to be made now. It needs to be made so that we can actually move forward in this community and have healthcare available to all residents. Thank you.
Thank you. It will be short. We're going to take a short break. I say at least 5 minutes, just to give us a minute to think, please. Well, not think, because a lot of us already know up here, but just to even,
Recess.
just to get a minute for ourselves, but just 5 minutes.
Not together.
Yeah, yes. Thank you, thank you, thank you. The final item on this agenda is city council discussions and possibly an action of the city term sheet. I will call on my colleagues for their comments. Who would like to begin?
Marty, do you want to go first or
No,
do you want me to go first?
Go ahead.
All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all so much for coming out. You know, I have been on this council for approximately 4.5 years, and I went through the trenches when we first, had to insert ourselves into the hospital to save that hospital. I know how detrimental it would be for our community not to have a hospital. Can you just imagine what it would do to us? It is absolutely necessary that we join forces with the new Imperial Valley Healthcare District. And because, as the gentleman that pointed out, the reimbursement rates would increase, we would then save on duplicate costs, to provide the same services that we are currently competing for. And, it would bring this community together. Not only that, the benefits of joining forces would also attract more healthcare providers down here, more specialists down here, which we know are extremely needed in the Imperial Valley. Many of us have to travel out of county to get that type of service. And so I know that it's extremely important that we move forward with this transaction. And so I will end my comments at that, but I have been advocating for this to happen since I was involved, because one thing I'd like to point out, when I was appointed to serve on the ECRMC board back in 2022, it didn't take me long to see that the hospital could not sustain the losses that it was incurring. And I was the one that started waving the red flag that something was wrong and that we needed to take action. So here we are tonight. And again, I thank you all for coming out, to support the merger and the acquisition of ECRMC. Thank you.
I want to also thank everyone for coming out. I also really want to publicly recognize Pablo and his crew from UCSD. They are doing an incredible job, and they have turned a good financial corner. I'm not saying that we're out of the woods, but they've turned this around and done a terrific job managing ECRMC right now. I'm very, very thankful for that. I want to acknowledge them for that. I don't even see them in the crowd. Is Pablo here? Oh, there he is. Thank you. Sorry, didn't see you. Thank you, Pablo. Appreciate that. So we'll have probably more discussion later, but I just wanted to acknowledge that and thank everyone really for coming out and being a part of this discussion and open. I'm hoping that everybody's eyes were opened for both sides. It's obvious that we must merge both hospitals. That's what the district was created for. We want this to happen. And so just making this happen is what we're here about tonight. Thank you. And the reason, by the way, we're having so many people to come up and being able to share is because we called for an open meeting. This wasn't going to happen. And, we made this tonight happen. We wanted that. We want you included. Thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone for being here as well. And I'm just going to mirror some of what Marty said as well. It's all about being able to have input, whether you're an employee that works in El Centro or you're a resident of El Centro. I think one of the things that I can say that I know it's important for us to merge, but I'm also want to make sure that all the right information is out there. And so I know for me, one of the only thing that I'm looking at is that the appraisal values that was given It was given, based on what the gentleman stated was, I think it was 20 million lower or something like that because of the debt. But I do want to just say that when the state approves the seismic retrofit of El Centro Regional Medical Center, that appraisal is going to go up significantly. And right now we have, just based on my numbers, as far as the appraisal, and I just want to read this out for everybody. Our Calexico Outpatient Center is appraised right now at 5.2 million, 29. We have residential homes that have been purchased in El Centro through the hospital. One home, and they're right there in the vicinity. One's on Poplar Drive and one's on Pepper Drive. One is $735,000. The other is $451,000. Our El Centro Outpatient Center, that's the one located on 4th and Main. Yeah, 4th and Main. That one's $4 million. The medical office itself is 17.4 million. And right now, the way the appraisal is, based on our last numbers, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Baramore or city attorney, 74 million. That's, so altogether, just with the assets, 101.8 million, but that is before the seismic. There will be a change once the seismic is recognized, the retrofitting that's been done through ECRMC, so that will hike that value up, because as Mr. Garcia stated earlier, I'm not sure, I think he left, but the retrofit is going to be a substantial amount of expense for pioneers as well. And it is important that El Centro does have that retrofit, and we are the ones that are able to sustain any type of medical care going forward. So with that, I'll go ahead and thank you all for your comments. I would like to say, when I raised my right hand and took the oath, that same day, the city clerk told me, not only are you a city elect, but you're also going to be a trustee for the board of the hospital. I said, okay. I had to hear comments after that. Oh, she doesn't know what she's doing. She doesn't know how to, and you're right. I didn't know nothing about no hospital. I'll be the first to say that. But I learned. I studied. I learned. Pablo and his team are amazing. David, I call him the number man. He is amazing. But Lynn, she explained everything. It was about what you go out and you do. You can't say that somebody can't teach you something. I went out and I learned and I studied and I took the time. I had to be at work at 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm up at 4 o'clock in the morning studying because I'm hungry. Why? Because I'm serving you. It's not because it's all about me. It's because what I want to see, the outcome for all of you. So I had to sit up there and I had to say, being born and raised here in El Centro, my family and I, we're 5 generations strong right here in El Centro. I was born in the El Centro Hospital. I was born with asthma, pneumonia, and bronchitis. The doctor told my parents I wouldn't make it. I wouldn't live. They said she's not going to make it past 6 months. They kept reviving me. I kept going back to the hospital. They saved my life. They saved my life. All through grade school, I was in and out of the hospital, in and out of the hospital. My sisters, I called them my right and my left. They would find me just passed out. They would call the ambulance. I was in and out of the hospital. There is no way that we can go without health care. There is no way we can go without health care. And with that being said, I make a motion for this term to be approved. And I need a second.
And I will second it.
Before you vote, I want to confirm what you're voting on. In your package, you have a term sheet. In agenda, you have a term sheet that looks like this. It has lines on it that shows the redlining. It is the term sheet. Yeah. It is the term sheet that IVHD provided to us to vote on.
Could you please summarize that, Betsy, for us?
Okay, I will. The transaction is for IVHD to acquire all of the assets and liabilities of El Centro Regional Medical Center There's some terms in here that might have been used, the cover sheet's been removed. So I'll just say of El Centro Regional Medical Center, AB 918 requires that. ECRMC will use commercially reasonable efforts to maintain at least $5 million of cash on hand. The assets transferred at closing include the 4 residential properties owned by the city on the street behind ECRMC and the clinic property at 385 Main, as well as the main building at 1415 Ross. In addition to the above, and in exchange for a full and complete release by IVHD of the city, ECRMC and their respective managers and affiliates of all claims and liabilities other than obligations under the definitive transaction documents, the city and ECRMC will transfer the assets of the hospital and the city shall make a one-time cash payment to IVHD of $5 million upon the closing. And I want to point out that the closing is not when the term sheet is signed. The closing is when the deal actually closes, which is a number of months away. The definitive transaction documents will contain covenants requiring that all of the foregoing funds only be used to fund operations at El Centro Regional Medical Center. In no event will the city be required to pay any amount in excess of the above referenced cash payment, plus the expenses referenced below. This one-time payment is intended to support healthcare for city residents. Prior to the closing, ECRMC will enter into a 3-year line of credit for $15 million that will remain in place following the closing. The LLC shall have a balance of 0 at closing. The city will not guarantee, cosign, or in any way be responsible for the LLC. The city, I'm going to summarize from here on. The city will cooperate with IVHD in the tax measure, which has to be on the ballot by November 2026. The terms of the transaction will not change in the event that the tax measure does not pass. At closing, ECRMC will terminate its employees and IVHD will offer to employ all of the terminated ECRMC employees effective immediately as of the closing date at compensation levels consistent with what each employee received immediately pre-closing. At or prior to closing, IVHD will establish or make available a private retirement plan for participation by the transferred employees. And these are the closing conditions, which we've had a lot of discussion about. Among other customary conditions to closing, at the closing, the assets must include at least $5 million of cash on hand, and the liabilities shall not include more than $29 million of specified payables. The specified payables, and this is from ECRMC, the specified payables mean the sum of the following amounts calculated from ECRMC's balance sheet. ECRMC accounts payable, accrued expenses, and accrued compensation, not including accrued benefit. To summarize, assuming this is approved by the IVHD board, as they have indicated they will do, the parties would begin negotiating a written definitive agreement. That definitive agreement will be provided by the city's, the initial draft of the definitive agreement will be provided by the city's outside counsel. No party will be obligated to indemnify another. IVHD will not be required to close the transaction in the event of a material breach of the representations or warranties prior to closing. They will not attempt to procure a type of insurance called representations and warranties insurance in connection with the closing. There'll be certain standard provisions in the definitive agreement. The transfer of hospital licenses is a prerequisite to consummating the transaction and the murder. IVHD will pay for that. IVHD will use its best efforts to operate ECRMC as a general acute care hospital for 10 years post-closing. The city will be responsible through its El Centro Financing Authority to use commercially reasonable efforts to transfer the Preston Hollow bond obligations to IVHD. Basically on the same terms and conditions as are currently existing in that bond issue. There's some additional provisions called binding provisions, which regulate the parties' relationships. They provide access to books and facilities. They provide that ECRMC will conduct business in the same way it has been conducted, but will coordinate with IVHD. Each party bears its own costs and expenses. The city provides the $1.5 million closing costs, as has been discussed. The provision is governed by the laws of the state of California. There are certain non-disparagement clauses, press release clauses, standard provision that this is a binding agreement and it constitutes the entire agreement, and basically says these provisions will terminate on the 90th day following the term sheet if there has been no definitive agreement reached by that time. If you have questions, let me know. I might have memorized this by now.
Do you have any questions, colleagues?
I have a question just regarding the Preston Hollow transfer of bond obligations.
Yeah.
Where, if that doesn't happen, what happens city-wise?
If that doesn't happen, I believe it would be a prerequisite to the closing that could prevent the closing. We have no reason to believe at this point in time it will not occur. But if it didn't occur, it would leave a bond issue, a substantial bond issue that had no revenues securing it.
I need
Uh,
everybody to vote, please.
No, I think we have a motion on the floor and a second, and I think we should have a robust discussion. I think that 6.5 million is about, correct me if I'm wrong, about 10 operating days for the hospital. Our board is dwarfed by the hospital. It is 5 times the size of our city budget. To think that our little city is going to somehow push us over the edge and cause this big boat to float when we're on a little dinghy just doesn't seem appropriate to me. We have, I appreciate everyone's comments, but you have to take everything into consideration and not just one item. We have obligations at the city. We have negotiations coming. Our employees are behind and need to be brought up to scale. I, for one, am just as anxious, if not more, than anyone in the room for the hospital to be transferred into IVHD. But what is this money being, let me just back up a little bit. It seems that we've done this, so many things backwards. Wouldn't have been a lot better if we had started the district, started collecting funds so that there would be funds for the hospitals to operate before this took place, before these transfers. Now there's some sort of an emergency when I'm saying that this $6.5 million is a big hit to the city of El Centro and a drop in the bucket for the hospital. How could this drop, tip this boat over? I'm not convinced at this. That's why I want a discussion about this. We're giving away over $10 million of real estate and the license for free. And as Councilmember Camarena said, when this retrofitting, seismic retrofitting is actually finished, the hospital will be worth far, far more than it is now, an appraisal. So I just feel like this is a drop in the bucket for the hospital, but it is a hit for our city. Granted, if things, if nothing goes wrong, we'll recover from this, after a while. But we have fiduciary responsibility on both ends. We are the not just the city board, but we are the board at the hospital as well. And so I'm looking at both of these point of views. Any other discussion
We've been back and forth for the last 2 years. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I understand your concern. And I understand that the city, we do have to worry about our employees. It goes far beyond that, though. If you heard everybody in here, not one person said, do not do this agreement. And they see that it's going to benefit us in some type of way because they're looking at the long run. What's next? What can come after this? what can happen to not only our city, but our hospital. No, we didn't ask for this. Oh yeah, that's right. We did not ask for this. That's a fact. But this is where we're at. So we either can make it or we can break it. And if we break it, the consequences can really kick all of us in the tail. So I'm at a point right now to where I can content with Sylvia and Mr. Garcia in the audience. We spent numerous hours together. We seen each other so much. We seen each other more than our families. We were in debates. We were at the hospital. We were here at the city making decisions, going back and forth, going back and forth. And I got to give it to him. I've learned a lot from Sylvia. I've learned a lot from Ecker. I learned a lot from Martha. I learned a lot from Tomas. We had to sit there and it was a lot of negotiating. It was a lot of things that we did not want to bear, but we didn't ask for this. But we come to a time right now where this is it. We have to make a decision, and we need to come forth for the people. This is who we serve. Not one person stood up here and said, do not do this. Not one.
I understand that. That's true. I understand that. And we serve two entities. What I have a hard time with is that how could this drop in the bucket break it, as you say? And I can't take away from all that you've done for this long time of negotiating.
Oh, no, nothing
all that
against
you've
you.
done.
Nothing
I
against
can't
you.
take away that from any of you. And I appreciate what you've done, all the hours you've invested. Believe me, thank you. Thank you. But I have not been convinced at all that this money that El Centro City will take a hit on is going to make a difference in a multi-million-dollar hospital.
What options are you weighing now? What are the other, Councilmember Marroquin, if you could step in, you were on the negotiating committee. The other, the debt, the series debt, what was the series debt compared to what we're asked of now? Please.
Well, as I had explained to my colleagues, that yes, it is a significant amount of money. However, as you saw in the financial presentation, the city can sustain, that hit as Councilmember Ellett refers to it. This is something that is not about, it's not going directly to the hospital, Mr. Ellett. It's going to the IVHD, okay,
Yes.
to help sustain the operations of a new district, okay? You might look at it as just pennies, on the dollar for, the number of operating days for the hospital, but it's the principle of the whole transaction, okay? It is our contribution to the district. As some people in the audience pointed out, El Centro Regional Medical Center is not a district. And so we then have not been taxing our residents, for that contribution, such as what has been done in the South End and the North End. And so the way I look at this is that this is our contribution into this new district that will then house ECRMC and PMH, okay?
Thank you.
It's not going directly to
Yes.
ECRMC to help with their operations.
Yes, okay.
It's our contribution to this health district
Yes.
that will improve the quality of health care in the Imperial
I
Valley.
understand, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
And also I want to point out that we have other sources of funds, that we can dip into in the city in the event that something drastic should happen. Okay, so, we will take a dip in our reserves. Okay, but we have ways of, augmenting whatever happens within the city. And, and time, will also help us. Because as I pointed out before, we're collecting 0.5% of the sales tax revenues that we generate in this city. The city is growing. We have many new retail businesses in the city that are also contributing to the Measure P fund. So we will not, this will not endanger the city at all.
You're suggesting using Measure P funds?
No, we can offset other expenses with Measure P funds. We cannot use Measure P funds for this transaction.
Making clear, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The Measure P funds.
But I would say that
Measure P funds are dedicated for specific things, okay? So, but we have reserves, we can then, take from Measure P to supplement whatever it is that we need to do within the city, okay?
But I think Measure P has already been taken out and put into the budget, the general budget. We have to help balance it. And so that's what my concern is that nobody here is right here trying to say we don't want the hospital. We're looking at what the cost is going to be for the city. And I think if you can guarantee, Sylvia, that we're going to be able to pull off the compensation study and so forth, when we're already having problems just being able to get it implemented.
I cannot guarantee anything, but just looking at the numbers, was a clear indication to me, because I too was anxious about the compensation study. But the numbers, show that, at the moment, we can sustain, the pay increases that the employees of the city of El Centro deserve. And we can also sustain the contribution into the healthcare district.
Okay, and so that's what one of my questions has been all along, is making sure that that budget, when I heard the budget the first time and I heard Andy's presentation from the beginning of November, December up until today, when he says that the budget does not contain any type of salary, wages and so forth like that.
Right.
And then the budget also contained Measure P monies that was put in to balance it. Then there was also a contribution of what we found as far as, I believe it was workman's comp or something, that was also put into the budget. If you can correct me if I'm wrong, what topic it is.
I don't
Mr.
recall
Paramo.
those numbers,
But I don't recall the numbers, but I recall the incidents that led there. So I was trying to get a true reflection of what the budget is.
Yeah, there is
because those monies can't be used on just anything.
No,
right.
you're right.
There-
But we're considering it as a whole.
That the funds, the revenues you're referring to are for PERS, is what they, yes,
That's
it's,
the extras that they found. So those
Approximately-
are very,
well, I don't know if it's extra, it's like 4 million off of the reserves that are actually have to be allocated to cover PERS.
and only PERS related
But
issues.
however, what I understand is those 4 million were not included in tonight's presentation.
That's what I was asking for.
Okay,
So
so
yeah.
that will not impact us.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
So it would, if you look at it the other way, it would be 32 million minus the 4, the 28 would be available, is what Mr. Heath is saying.
Okay. Without the Measure P monies that were used to balance the budget, that were moved in.
We didn't use Measure P to balance the budget.
Or when we're looking at.
No,
Okay.
what we're looking at is Measure P will then, help us, to cover expenses that we may incur in the future, if we need to.
I just think that, I know that it's a habit, but it's not a good one to be able to count salary vacancies and savings as part of the budget.
The
And that's what
reality,
and that- one
of the
moment I'm speaking,
situation.
please. One moment, one thing is that to be able to use that as a foundation of a good budget is not the right way to do it. And so, go ahead.
The reality of the situation is that we have not been able to fill all of the positions that were allocated for. So we have made adjustments to that to at least plan for 90%, okay, of those vacancies to be filled.
And
Right? That has been worked into the budget.
Okay, I'm going to make sure, and also being able to look at the number of temporaries that need to be moved over as well.
I just want to remind everyone that it's not that we haven't given up anything. I'm saying that we'll be giving away over $10 million of real estate and a multi-million-dollar hospital. I know there's a debt there, but it's an up and running business. And I would, why has the question not been raised? Where is Imperial? Where is Hopeville? Why is it El Centro that has to take this hit alone. And Calexico has had a district they've been paying into. Raleigh has a district they've been paying into. I'd like to propose that we double whatever Imperial would offer. Why hasn't that been brought up? Why has that never been discussed? Why is this on our shoulders and no one else's? We're giving it away.
I think what he's trying to say is that we service people in every city. I believe that's what he's trying to
Right.
say. And so we, like I say, we,
In 2026, everyone in the county will be taxed.
Mhm.
So if it passes.
yes.
If it passes, everybody will be paying insurance.
Exactly. And this is the way the hospital costs should be spread out across the entire county, and it's not going to be a burden to anyone. That is the way it is, should work.
That's how it's going to work once the.
Yes, I understand, but that is my concern. Just saying that's the way it should work. Unfortunately, this has been, I think, mishandled from day one.
So, did you want to be able to go to vote for a lesser amount?
Can't hear you.
Are you going to are you going to vote for something? Are you going to put something out there?
Oh.
We have a motion and.
We have a motion and a
Do you-
second on the
Have a
floor.
motion
Yes.
and a second on the floor. Are you ready to vote?
Are you guys ready to vote?
Do you need
Ready?
additional discussion? Is fine, if you want.
I would like discussion, so maybe, I just want to be clear with everybody in the city that we're the ones being asked to take the hit. I understand that Calexico has paid, their share, and so has Brawley. And I just want everybody to understand that. And, okay, so we're gonna take the hit, and our employees, this is gonna be difficult. I mean, we have, like I said, we're a pipsqueak compared to the hospital. And we have our own employees that need to be brought up to where they should be. So I'm not diminishing the importance of the hospital at all. It is absolutely necessary. That's good, but that's good. Thank you. Thank you.
That's what you called this meeting for, to hear us out.
Thank you.
So please.
Thank you. Thank you. That's what I want to hear.
So at this time, we will go ahead and vote, colleagues. That's it?
I think so.
Question.
Call for the vote.
Well, there's a motion and a second on the floor. Please vote.
Yes.
I'm missing Councilmember Camarena, Councilmember Allen.
Sorry, I didn't, let me get rid of this little drop-down screen. Sorry.
Did I?
You have to save it as well.
Yeah, I did.
Motion passes 3 with 1 abstain.
I want to take this time to thank all of you for coming out, voicing your opinion, your concerns. We appreciate it. It is 8:03 and this meeting is adjourned.